Check, check, 1, 2. This is a audio check. We should be able to hear my voice, and I will be starting this walkthrough here in just 1 second. I want to enable our secondary camera. If you can hear my voice okay, just throw something in the comments or throw up a wave or what have you so I know that you can hear my voice clearly, please. Let's load camera 2. Let's go here, then here, then here. Cool, cool. Thanks for tuning in. I assume that wave means you can hear me all right. And I'm going to go here. Now let us do this next part, which means I can add my second camera. Hopefully with no problems. Second camera should be connecting now. Hopefully everyone can hear me well. And hopefully there is no echo, as well as there's a clarity on the screen. And hopefully, once again, you can see those clearly in focus. Let me give this a touch. There, so hopefully you can see everything in focus there up top clearly, and you can see the secondary camera without any feedback. We're going to try this again. We did this earlier, and clearly it did not work the way I wanted it to. So I'm going to do this again so I have it on file and I can share it. As those of you who come in, I want to thank you for tuning in. I am DJ Crate Digger of the Mighty Sound Champion crew. I'm a DJ, I'm a producer, I'm an instructor, and kind of as an instructor is the energy or the spirit with which I have put this, I guess it's a tutorial together, for lack of a better word. I did it earlier today, and I was having issues with my Wi-Fi, and those issues with my Wi-Fi were making everything else just didn't have the quality I needed it to have. And I am very much acknowledging the irony of doing a live stream about quality live streaming, and I couldn't get my live stream to be good. I get it. I laughed about it myself, and I was lightweight pissed, but I understood I had to kind of take a step back, come back to it, because I'm doing this for those who are looking to either improve or step into or move into the live streaming space. So I kind of needed to do it with the spirit of service, and less about the spirit of how I felt about it. With that being said, live streaming is something that's not new. It's been going on for a while, but clearly the pandemic and other things have pushed us into a lot more people doing a lot more with live streaming. Now, most times when people say or think about live streaming, most of them either think about Facebook Live, YouTube Live, or IG Live. That's very reasonable. There's other spaces like Zoom, Twitch, and some other places that have live streaming options. But right now, a lot of energy is going into, once again, Facebook Live, IG Live, Zoom, YouTube, and of course, Twitch and some other things. So there's a couple of different methods, tips, and tricks that I want to share that are based on what it is you may be looking to do in terms of your live streaming. With that being said, there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat. And I say that meaning there's no one way to do this or one right way, but there's a lot of different ways you can do it, and based on what it is you have, both from a technical standpoint, a hardware or software standpoint, cables, what type of setups you have, all of those things influence kind of how we basically get from A, which is our source, to the end there, our streaming platform, and whatever that may look like for us. Now, every now and then I got to throw my hand up in here and help this refocus. There we go. So I want to start by saying that the first method we're going to talk about is a direct-to-device method. Now, everything I talk about for this is with the assumption that you're not looking to go directly from your phone, tablet, iPad, whatever, directly into IG. I'm assuming, or Facebook or YouTube. So anytime I say any of the streaming platforms, unless I specifically name or list specifics, I'm trying to refer to them all. So if you're just looking to go right from your phone directly or your iPad directly to the streaming platform, you can listen to what I have to say, but you don't really need to, because your phone, your device, whatever, is ready to capture video, capture audio, and send it right to the streaming platform. With that being said, that's based on most times what's happening through your voice and or the acoustics and ambiance around you. So if it's people having a conversation, your device microphone is set up to capture that and to send it along the data packet along with the video to the streaming platform. When you move into wanting to have DJ equipment, musical instruments, or multiple microphones, so for example, if you're podcasting or anything other than the voice, and not just the voice, but the ambiance. So the voice, the fire trucks passing in the background, kids in the next room, the dryer going, anything that you would hear in just a natural acoustic space, all that gets transferred in some shape, form, or fashion. If you're looking to have a more specific, dedicated, clear, or pristine feed, that's what I'm going to be talking about here today. So the first method, direct-to-device method, there's a couple of different ways. If you're talking about going from a microphone, DJ equipment, musical instruments, or multiple mics, there's a couple of different ways you can go directly into your streaming platform. And that is basically through what's called a TRRS component. So that's whether it's an iRig, an iStream, they have cables, adapters, different things that allows you to go from whatever your source is, microphones, DJ equipment, musical instruments, etc., through this TRRS, and I'll explain what that means here in a second, to your streaming platform. So if you look at most headphones have an 1/8 inch jack with 2 bands. And it's kind of hard to see because of the focus, but that has 2 black bands on it. That's your normal everyday headphones. You look at your Beats or your headphones or your earbuds, anything that's not made with a microphone component, it'll have those 2 bands. Something that has a microphone component will be like this. It'll be earbuds with the microphone, or something that you got with your iPhone. It'll have 3 bands, and that is the tip ring system, tip ring sleeve system, which means it allows that stereo audio to be sent as well as the microphone. So basically what you're doing is you're receiving an audio feed from your phone, whether it's someone talking to you, whether it's music you're listening to, a video, and then it also receives an audio signal from you via your voice or background or what have you through that microphone, and it sends that to the device. So there's a two-way street going there. That's what that TRRS does. It now allows your iPhone, iPad, Samsung, Android, etc., tablets, all those, that headphone jack is now turned from a one-way receiving port to a two-way communication port, which allows, once again, audio to be received from the video or whatever source that's being looked at or listened to on the tablet, and it's allowing you to send your voice or whatever audio signal to the device. All right. So if you're looking to go directly from, so for example, as a DJ, if you're looking to go directly from your mixer into an iRig, you can do that. I have an iRig here. What I love about the iRig is a couple of different things. It has an XLR in, or a female XLR port, so you can run, for example, off your monitor or booth, you can run a 1/4 to male XLR adapter. You can either run that adapter directly in here, if you want to have another XLR cable to extend your reach from the mixer, you can run that here. This TRRS sleeve will go directly into your iPhone, Samsung phone, Android phone, iPad, tablet, etc., even a laptop, and it will send that audio to the streaming platform. All right. And I love the iRig in part because it has a gain control on the side and also allows for you to do things with phantom power. So if you have a microphone that requires phantom power, it has a 9-volt battery that allows it to push phantom power. And I'm going to get back to why I love the iRig here in a second. But once again, whether you have a microphone, a DJ mixer feed, a guitar that has a DI, or whatever it is, you can convert your different sources down to send basically a XLR feed to an iRig or an iStream or something like that that has the XLR on one end and the TRRS on the other directly to the platform. There's also other cables and adapters that you can use to do that same thing. All right. So now, what if you have, say, multiple mics or multiple instruments or things, more than one kind of source? Do I need you can't really have 4 iRigs and plug them all into one device. All right. So what do we do then? We can move to our next method, which is a multiple source method. Now, with the multiple source method, there's going to be multiple ways to use that. So, and I see your question, pause. I'll get to it here in a second. Multiple source method, there's going to be different ways to basically still complete this top to bottom or A to Z movement from your sources to the streaming platform. Now, when it's all said and done, everything is going to need to go into the streaming platform via that TRRS. So that's still part of the picture. It just moves up and down the signal flow based on how we get to it. Paz asks, if you use a mixer, it only needs 1 XLR, not 2. So, a couple things. The TRRS, specifically off the iRig, that is a mono send. So if you have a mixer, you can run one of your XLR outs directly to the iRig, and you can run that second XLR out to your house system or some other interface or what have you if you choose to. With that being said, the signal to the iRig is dependent on how you have your master set on your mixer. So if you want your sound loud or need it louder in the studio space and you turn your master up, that also turns up the feed or the level of the signal being sent through the iRig. And sometimes, and I'm going to talk about it later, the signal that needs to be sent to your streaming platform and the signal that needs to be sent to your, what I'll call your studio sound system or your in-house sound system, sometimes those are very different. And once again, I'm going to talk about it here in a minute as well, if we're talking about how we're using the streaming platforms. So I'll reference it now, but we'll talk about it more later. There's 2 basic types of streaming platforms. There's a one-way streaming platform. An example is Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and IG Live. That is one way in the context of me as the content creator sending my video and or audio to the platform. All right? Now, yes, the platform sends it out to other people, but we're not talking about anything that happens on the platform's other side when we talk about the one-way. It's just about me sending, as a DJ, I'm live streaming my set. I want you to see me DJ, and I want you to hear me DJ. That's that one way. Now, on Zoom and IG Live, when I have someone join my IG Live, when I now have 2 people on the IG Live, or Zoom or other streaming platforms that allow a 2-way or a communicative relationship where I'm sending audio and or video and the receiver or one of the receivers is sending audio and video back, that changes and adds a third component, which we'll talk about later, to this overall process. And the Teddy Riley Babyface situation is one example of how that kind of third leg of IG Lives, when people join lives, can cause problems if you're not properly being considerate of that signal flow. So inside of the multiple source method, whatever our source is, once again, we're talking about multiple sources. So whether it's several mics or whether you have 1 or 2 DJs or a mic and a DJ or a mic DJ and a bass player or whatever the multiple sources are, if you're podcasting and have multiple mics, that source has to get to our TRRS component and from our component into the device to the streaming platform. So I want to add one thing just so I'm being clear inside of the signal chain. All right. So for anything to get to the streaming platform, it has to come through our device, through IG. So we get on our phones or our tablets or whatever, and we open up the IG app, and through the IG app is how we access or Facebook or YouTube or whatever it is. So the device itself, that has to be in the feed. So I don't want to leave that out or be confusing about that. How we get into the device, that's where that TRRS kicks in. So I didn't have it in there before, and it may have been a bit confusing, so I want to be clear. This TRRS, iRig, iStream, other adapters, plug into the device. That device opens the software that accesses the streaming platform. All right, so if that was confusing before, I apologize. So now in the multiple source method, how do we get from multiple sources to here, because we can't have one of these for every mic or every DJ and plug all of them into the phone. At some sort, we have to have some sort of audio interface. So that audio interface can look like a couple different things. All right, and this is where I'm going to try to incorporate the second camera, and hopefully this works. So one audio interface that we can have is something like this. So this is an M-Audio Profire 2626. It has 8 channels that you see up front, 8 inputs, and allows me to send 8 separate audio signals into this interface. I have controlled in my studio setup now by this MacBook. And you can see here how my voice is in channel 1 and I'm talking. And then if I wanted to start playing some music here through, you can see now 3 and 4 are going to be the feeds that I have my DJ setup running to. And then over here, you'll hear on 7 and 8, I have mic'd for the hand drums. So the way I have this set up is everything that happens goes into this snake. I have 24 channels on the snake, but only 12 do I have running to interfaces. The first 8 go to the Profire that I just showed you, and then I have 4 going to a Pro Tools rig that I use for everything that goes through the iMac. So I have a separate, technically a separate recording setup, input-output setup for the recording or production aspect of what I do in the iMac, and then I have a whole separate 8 channels for performance-based things that happen either for streams and or other processes that run first and foremost through the MacBook. Now they may get incorporated into other things, but the MacBook is the master when it comes to the software that runs that interface, okay? So if we're going into an interface, once I set all my interface knobs and channels for the input, what I need to know or do is next have that interface, as you can see, is receiving. I set my software faders according to however I need these multiple feeds, sources, what have you, to sound in the studio. The faders control the sound in the studio. All right, and then out of the stereo outs or the master outs of the interface, I have that going in to this channel 2-3 of this small mixer. Some of you may not have another mixer. You may just have the interface, and the interface goes either directly to your active speakers, or if you have passive speakers, then you have an amp that your interface would connect to, and then from the amp to your speakers. Now it is possible to go inside of your computer settings and have your audio interface as the input and have a different device and or the laptop itself be the output, and all those different configurations are choices and options that you kind of have to work out on your own. But I say all that to say this is one example of an audio interface that handles multiple instruments or sources. All right. From that, we've determined how our sound in the studio is going to sound. How do I then get all of these different instruments into the device through the tip ring sleeve? We now start to talk about what's auxiliary busing, meaning how to route all of these different components or sources to my tip ring sleeve separate from how I have them set up in the studio. So once again, these faders here on my software control what I hear in the studio, and I've here developed what's called an auxiliary bus, BUS, kind of like you think of it like a city bus or a school bus. It's a routing tool that allows you to send, based on the settings that you stipulate, those audio sources to other spaces, I guess is the best way to say it. So for example, I can have channel 1, which is my mic, and you can see what that auxiliary bus setting is. 3 and 4 here are my left and right of the turntables. You can see what those settings are. 7 and 8 here with the hand drums. You can see what those auxiliary settings are. All of those come out of my auxiliary 1 master send. And on this interface, I have that set as return A. Return A comes out. Now let me take a half step back. This audio interface has the 8 inputs. It also has 8 outputs. So output 1 and 2, like I mentioned before, go to that small mixer for my in-studio sound. Output 3 connects to what is return A. Return A comes to the snake. So basically I'm going out of the interface via software auxiliary bus 1 to return A. Return A in the snake sends all of that information that I have set according to those knob settings through the XLR that I have here from return A, and that XLR feeds all the way around to the tip ring sleeve device that I have plugged into the iPad right now. That allows you to hear my voice, that music, and those instruments. All right, so everything that you hear in this tutorial, none of it is going to be captured by the actual device microphone. Everything is coming through mics and or direct lines from the DJ gear through the interfaces. All right, so that is one method of getting my sources in through the audio interface into the tip ring sleeve through busing inside of my audio interface. All right, so what happens if I don't have an audio interface? All right, what if I have I just have an old school mixer? That's an option as well. All right, so some of us may not have an interface. We might just have an old school mixer. All right, there's a whole lot of different types of mixers. Well, let's move this down here for a second so it's out the way. There's a lot of different types of mixers, but you know, let's just look at this one. So this is an example of another mixer. All right, luckily this is the first line mixer that I ever purchased. This thing is probably close to 20 years old, 22 years old, anyway, 18 years old, whatever. So it's the same concept as with the software mixer, but it's just a physical piece of hardware. So I would have all of my different instruments or sources plugged in. So 1 would be a mic here for the microphone. 2 and 3 would be a feed from the DJ booth or what have you. Then I could have other mics from my drums, or if I have a guitar player or a keyboard player, or if I have a drum machine, or there's a lot of different inputs that can go into these XLR and or quarter-inch inputs. All right, this mixer has 8 channels. So out of any of these 8 channels, or if you want to count your stereo channels double, 12 inputs, either way, I can now, once again, same concept. What I want things to sound like inside the room I'm in, I set my faders accordingly. All right, and then I would have my master at whatever level. So that would be one example of what my fader settings would be. All right, I have different things at different fader settings based on how loud that I need them in the studio. How do I send them to a tip ring sleeve option, whether it's an iRig, whether it's an XLR to tip ring sleeve, whether it's an adapter, whatever the option is? Auxiliary busing works the same way on hardware mixers. Now this hardware mixer, well, let me say this. Every mixer does not have auxiliary options. All right, most times you'll need a multiple channel line mixer that has at least 1 or 2 auxiliary sends. That small mixer that I showed you up there, that is kind of like the last gate before anything hits my amp. This does not have any auxiliary feeds just because it's just it's a small compact mixer. It's not made to facilitate all that. On this mixer, it has 2 auxiliary sends. All right, so I can have 2 separate auxiliary mix downs or auxiliary bus mix downs sent to 2 separate spaces should I choose to. So if my mic is in channel 1, I would set that dial the same way I would on the software auxiliary bus. I do the same thing physically with hardware. Then if I have a DJ rig here, I would set those levels here. If I had a drum or something else, I would set those levels here. And I would do that according to any and every instrument or any and every input source that I want to send to that iRig or iStream or whatever the device is, anything that I would want to get into the tip ring sleeve option, which will then send it to the device, which will then send it to the streaming platform. All right. Now, this is kind of a master of my auxiliaries. So all of these different things kind of are added into this, then send it out to auxiliary 1 send. And once again, I would go 1/4 inch cable out to some sort of converter, probably 1/4 to XLR to either an iStream, or if I want to have one of these other cables that I've mentioned several times, and that would end in the TRRS, which will be plugged into my iPhone, Android, Samsung, iPad, tablet, etc., etc. One thing to keep in mind, especially when dealing with hardware mixers, software mixers too, but really important about hardware mixers. A lot of hardware mixers will have what is a pre-fader level and a post-fader level in terms of the bus. Meaning, pre-fader level, that means that this controls the level of whatever this source is with no consideration for where you've put the fader. So I may have a instrument going into channel 1, and I may have that fader instrument all the way down. So I will not hear that instrument, whatever's in channel 1, in my house because I have the fader all the way down. But if this is set to pre-fader level, anything that I do with my auxiliary bus to send it to the bus will receive it because it basically doesn't give a S what is going on with the fader. If it is post-fader level, the auxiliary busing is dependent on where you have the levels of the fader. So if I have a microphone going into channel 1, as an example, I have my fader all the way down, and then I have my post-fader level all the way up, none of that will recognize in the bus because I have my fader down. Now, of course, as I walk my fader up, exponentially, it'll send to that bus. But pre- and post-fader level is very important to recognize and realize and understand when you're talking about busing things out, especially on a hardware mixer, to get to that tip ring sleeve option that you decided to use to get into your device for your streaming. Now, there are different options and times where your software interface, your software mixer or the software for your interface can be set or changed back and forth from pre to post fader level. So keep an eye on that. But most hardware mixers will have a button that lets you decide whether it's pre and post fader for at least one auxiliary bus send, and then other ones after that, usually if it's not marked, mean it's going to be a post fader level situation. All right, so keep that in mind, especially when you have multiple sources that are going into mixers that need to be bussed out to accommodate whatever you're trying to send in to your device via that TRRS. So, with that being said, sometimes you may have an audio interface and a mixer. And that's what I have. I have DJ equipment, drum mics, and a vocal mic all go into audio interface. That audio interface then goes in to some sort of a mixer. And that was that small mixer that you saw. Now, one difference that I have is that when I do my signal chain, we talked about that auxiliary bus. For some folks, that auxiliary bus is at the mixer level, especially if you have a hardware mixer that these things go to and they don't have an interface. Your auxiliary bus is going to be at your mixer level. All right, and that'll be your sub or a secondary mix that then routes to your TRRS. All right, and that kind of sits in this space of the chain. Some of us have an audio interface, and from that audio interface, we'll have our auxiliary bus that then goes to the TRRS. All right, so it's not always a straight line. It once again depends on how you have your signal routed and how you have your studio or production space set up. So for me, I guess I can do this. I go into the interface. Interface then goes auxiliary bus to the TRRS, into, for me, an iPad into my streaming platform. But my audio interface also goes into the mixer, and from the mixer, I go into my sound system, all right? Because what I send directly for streaming, those levels are different than what I send to my house sound or my room sound to what I hear in the studio. One example is right now you're hearing me speak to you through a microphone that I'm wearing, all right? I have this microphone on. So you're not hearing me through any microphones on the phone or the iPad. So neither one of these two devices, all right? These are the two devices that are being used for this. Neither one of these is receiving audio based on the microphones in the devices. You're receiving all of the audio through the mic that I'm wearing, or directly, once again, from the DJ booth or the mics on the drums into the audio interface. So in the room right now, I don't need to have my mic at all in the house sound. I know what I sound like and I can hear myself. The same with the drums. The drums, while they are mic'd, I don't need to have those mics playing through my speakers. And because I'm talking and not DJing, I don't really need to have the music loud. It's not on now, but I don't need to have the music loud. And also, if I was doing a DJ set and talking, I would want to have the music loud enough to where I could hear it while I am doing my performance, but I have to be sure to be considerate of the fact that any audio that comes through that speaker is going to be picked up in some shape, form, or fashion through the mic that I'm wearing. And if I have music coming through the speaker, my mic coming through the speaker, those things also going bust out to my TRS, to the device, to the streaming platform, you'll start to hear and have situations like you had the other night with Teddy Riley when you have that echo loop. Now, I don't want to get too technical, but I do want to be honest in sharing this kind of concept. For me, when I speak to people, when I talk about feedback, I talk about feedback in the context of frequencies. So when I'm standing in front of a standing in front of a speaker with a microphone and I start talking, that squelching noise, that is feedback. The situation with Teddy Riley, that was more of an echo loop. That was basically the same audio program or signal going in and out and cycling through the overall audio chain, so where it was heard multiple times. Yes, it can be considered feedback, but sometimes using those terms interchangeably becomes confusing. So let's step to the next part. All right, whether you have direct or multiple source methods, it doesn't matter on this next part. No matter how you're getting into your streaming platform, when we're talking about things like Zoom, or if we're talking about things like IG Live with a joined person, or you have someone joining your live, or you're joining someone else's live, meaning you have two people going live at the same time, or Zoom, or some of those other streaming platforms where it's communication two ways. I'm talking to someone, they're talking back. I'm sending music or sound to someone, they're sending music and sound back. We now have to take into consideration the last part of this kind of situation and how it comes back to us. So I'm going to move these things around a little bit, and hopefully it doesn't become confusing by moving them. But when we talk about our streaming platform having two ways, or Zoom, for example, or IG Live when someone joins me, yes, I'm sending audio, and video we don't really talk about much because it's not germane to what we're talking about, but I'm sending audio and video to streaming device, streaming platform, and whoever's joining me is sending audio and video back. That audio has to come back to me, and I have to be able to hear that audio. All right? So part of what the TRRS, tip ring sleeve does, it allows the audio that I'm sending to be received by the device, then the streaming platform, as well as, depending on the type of device you're using for the tip ring sleeve, it also receives. It acts as the ears and the mouth, so to speak, so it can also receive back the audio that someone is sending. Why I advocate for the iRig specifically is because, once again, I can send through an XLR feed, all right? And that goes to the device through that tip ring sleeve. It also has a headphone jack. That headphone jack allows me to then have the capability to send whoever's talking to me, their audio comes back to me. One of the easiest ways for me to do that, because once again, most times I have multiple mics, DJ equipment going, so I can't have my own set of headphones just to hear back what the person's saying. Now, there is an option where I can have an earbud in one ear for the talkback and then another earbud in for DJ queuing and all that. That's uncomfortable for me. So what I do is, out of that headphone jack of the iRig, I run a cable like this. This is a regular old standard headphone jack, 1/8" headphone jack. And on the other end of this cable, it ends with a stereo RCA. So this is basically like, if you're old school like me, you used to have like a CD Walkman or a CD or even a tape man or whatever that you used to want to plug into a bigger sound system. So that headphone jack would come out of your CD Walkman or whatever, and that RCA would go into your amplifier or your receiver, your home stereo, and you could play your Walkman or whatever through the louder sound system. This is the same type of cable. This one is just long. So this part comes out of the iRig to receive the audio from whoever's talking on the other end of that two-way, whether it's a Zoom or IG Live that's joined or what have you, and I plug the RCAs into the tape in of my mixer. I'll walk you over and I'll show you. So once again, this is the last stop of anything that comes out of my speakers. So in theory, and you can see it lighting up as I'm talking, this is the channel that has the audio interface that my mic is attached to. I can turn that all the way down. You guys will still hear me just fine, because nothing that I'm doing is dependent on anything that's being sent to the amp. All right? So I would probably have these levels set low so I can hear the music just enough to be able to mix and blend with it. I would have tape in, meaning in from the tape. I would have that plugged in. All right? And then I would have the other end of this in the headphone jack of the iRig, which means that anyone on the other end of that Zoom or IG Live that's joined, their conversation or whatever audio they're sending to me will come in directly into the mixer and from the tape in directly to the main. I don't have to have a fader or any level controls over that. So I just have the option to turn the overall mix up and down to make sure I can hear them properly, and then I adjust my feed accordingly to make sure that I can first hear the other person loud enough, so I make that adjustment here, and then I bring my own levels up underneath that to where I can comfortably do whatever blending or mixing that I'm doing without having to worry about feedback. All right? One thing that people, once again, are starting to better understand but still need to catch up on is that most times from our source to our streaming platform has been a one-way. We are just sending video and sending audio for everyone else to receive. Zoom and IG Live that are joined, we have to now compensate for that audio coming back. And if we don't do it properly, when that audio comes back, it gets kicked into this part of the chain and doubles back, and we have that echo loop. And you'll start to hear things stutter and stagger and have that loop and echo, and it starts to sound like trash. So if you are a podcaster and have several mics, whether you're going directly into an audio interface and then auxiliary busing, or doing a mixer that has auxiliary buses and have to be able to hear each other back, figure out ways to run that back into a mixer and or in your interface busing. There's different ways to do it. I I can't really tell you how to do it because it's dependent on your interface and how it's set up. But there's ways to double that audio feedback into your interface and have it muted so it doesn't send audio out, but it can be heard in the mix. The same way I send it to my tape in for my mixer and then out through my sound system. Now, one thing about my sound system that I can show you briefly that I didn't talk about is here at the top. That's a headphone jack. I don't technically have to have anything come through the speakers. So if I really wanted to, if I'm just having a conversation, I can have it to where all of the room sounds are off or down. And I could have a pair of headphones plugged in, and I have this separate control for headphones. So if I really wanted to turn all of the speakers in the room off, I have that option, and then I can use my headphone jack to listen to audio that's coming back from whoever may have joined my IG Live, or if I'm in a Zoom situation where I have multiple people sending audio back from me, that's an option as well. I've seen people jump in and out. Thanks for everyone who stopped in, tuned in. If you have specific questions, feel free to throw them in the comments, and I can try to answer specific questions. Or if there's things that I said or terms or what have you that aren't clear, please throw them in the comments, and I can try to answer them directly. But that's pretty much it as far as audio. To recap, there's multiple methods, whether you're doing a direct-to-device method, which means you're basically going from a mic or a DJ rig or what have you directly into some sort of TRRS system, which is the tip ring sleeve plug. That plug goes directly into the headphone jack of your phone or iPad, tablet, what have you, and then from there, the streaming platform picks it up. All right, if you have multiple, and that's once again, that's the direct-to-device method. All right, now if you have multiple sources, you can't have 3 mics and 3 separate iRigs all going into the same device. All right, you can't do that right now. At some point, they may come up with something that allows you to do that. Right now, you got to have one TRRS system or plug going into a device. So how do I have those multiple sources? I can either go into a mixer, and from that mixer, auxiliary bus out to my TRRS, all right? Or if I have an audio interface, whether it's hardware or software or a combination, once again, I can use that auxiliary bus to go from my interface to auxiliary bus to TRRS, and then a secondary mixing or mix down hard fader controls or even your software faders for your mixer. So your in-room mix is what you need it to be. Camera link, any experience with that? As far as, I see your question here, Mike, give me, if you could help kind of be more detailed in what you're asking me. As far as linking cameras with what? Help me understand better what you're asking me, and I'll get back to your question there, Mike. Have you attempted splitting the TRS to 2 devices for simulcasting, IGFB? So no, I have not. But, and it's funny that you said that because Tim and I were having a conversation about that earlier. But 2 things, and I'll get back to your question here in a second, Mike. The question that Voice of Reason Harp was asking me is, have I attempted splitting the TRS to 2 devices for simulcasting? I have not, but what I have done is I've run multiple buses to different quote-unquote hardware or devices. So as I mentioned, I have an iRig. So I have the iRig, okay? Sorry. I got the iRig, okay? So I could route out of auxiliary bus 1, I could route this to the iRig and send this to whatever device is streaming to Facebook, all right? I have, and hopefully it doesn't cause an echo, so pray for me when I unplug this. I have this, and I can hear the echo already, but we'll work through it. I have this separate adapter and that separate adapter allows me to send whatever through that 1/8 inch jack. So if I wanted to, I would use that long cable I showed you before. I have multiple of these, but I can use this cable, for example, to come off of the back of my mixer or some other device that has RCA outs. I can run my RCA outs here, and then the other end of this will go into that adapter that I just showed you, and the other end is the tip ring sleeve, and that could go to my second interface. So now I'm sending, and that would run off of auxiliary bus 2. So whether it's hardware, we're here, I have auxiliary feed 1, which would go to an iRig. I can have 2. If I was using this hardware mixer, I would do a secondary auxiliary bus mix down, and that auxiliary 2 would go to the adapter. Or if we're talking in a software context, same thing. Over here, I have auxiliary 1, and then I have auxiliary 2. And I can have that auxiliary 2. I would do the same process. I would do that mix down here in the auxiliary buses. And the only thing that I would do that I haven't done is in the back of my audio interface, because this is just the software that runs the Profire 2626. All right. So once again, this has 8 ins, 8 outs. 1 and 2 go out to the master mixer, or the mixer for the house or the room mix. Out 3 goes to the Snake for auxiliary bus 1. I would then tell the software, make out 5, because 3 and 4 would technically be linked if I wanted to move them stereo. So I would jump to 5. Out 5, output 5 of the interface would be auxiliary bus 2. I would then route off the back of the audio interface, whatever that channel 5 is, I would route that, whether it's to the Snake or directly out to whatever other TRS output I would want to use, and that would be auxiliary bus 2 from the software, route it directly through whatever cabling to create a second mix down from a second TRRS output, yes, for that second device. So technically speaking, as many outputs as I have, if I wanted to do that again for output 7, I could just add another auxiliary bus in my software. Auxiliary bus 3 would be out 7, and then out 7 could run to a third device. Technically speaking, if I want to do it this way, I can have 3, 4 be the same mix down and run out of auxiliary bus 1, and that's 2 sends with the same mix down. So I could send those to 2 separate streaming platforms. 5 and 6 could be auxiliary bus 2. Those would have the same mix down, but it's still 2 signals. Those could go to another 2. And then 7 and 8 could be auxiliary bus 3. While 7 and 8 would be the same mix down, it's 2 separate channels, meaning 2 more separate devices could receive that audio. So I would have 3 separate mixes across 6 separate channels, if that makes sense, Harp. And it looks like it does. So instead of having to split any audio and drop any fidelity in any audio, especially when you're using software, make that motherfucking software work, bro. Tell that software that you want, if it can have 4 different auxiliary buses, make the software, make that shit work. Because it's not physically doing anything. As long as your laptop or computer or whatever can process it, all it is being a traffic cop and diverting the audio signals. It's kind of like people who work at the post office. That shit's coming in, and they design what zip code to send it each to. But they're not really copying or duplicating, the mail. Mike, jumping back to you said audio and video in the context of camera links. So a couple different things. I don't know if you're meaning in the context of recording or if you're talking about live, like when you go Facebook Live, YouTube Live at the same time, and even if you want to do IG Live. So Mike, what I'll say is when you're talking about audio and camera syncing, there's a couple of different ways to do it in the live context. Ideally, whatever your device is that is sending video, you want that to also be the device that sends audio. So, once again, this is an iPad that is running the Crate Digger IG account. All right, it's the top half of this split live, and as you can see, this audio cable that's coming in here is what's coming off that auxiliary bus 1 that allows this mic, my turntables, and both those drum mics. So there's 1, 2 mics, stereo DJ, and then 5 for the microphone I'm wearing. Those 5 audio channels are all going in to the bus, to the Snake first. From the Snake, I'm telling the software how to bus it out and creating that auxiliary mix. And that auxiliary mix goes output 3 through those cords and into here. So that way, whatever this video is, and even if the video is moving around or what have you, if I was moving the iPad, the audio and the video stay in sync. The same thing with the second device I'm using. So this phone is my FlyGuy AFP, which is my drone IG account. I have that linked to where right now I'm using the cable to mute the audio so I don't get that echo. But technically speaking, if I wanted to run a different audio mix or even the same audio mix, I could run that into this device. And the video from this device and the audio being routed into it are locked. Even if I'm not doing live, even if I'm just shooting video. So even if on my iPhone I go to my video app, my camera app, and I'm shooting a video. So technically speaking, I can now shoot a quote-unquote music video that has the music from that everyone is performing to clear. I'm not picking up that music from the microphone of the device, but I'm getting that music directly in off of a feed, whether it's from a boombox, whether it's from whatever that source is. I can feed that music in directly. I can then videotape whatever movement and whatever I'm videotaping. The movement and the music is synced, and I'm also not picking up any of the background of people moving around, dancers, traffic, yelling, talking, communications, background. None of the ambient noise is picked up unless there's a mic routed into the system that then gets picked up for the TRRS. So you're saying thumbs up and that you got it. Hopefully that answered your question. I still got a few more minutes if there's other questions or other things that people want me to specifically talk about. But once again, first and foremost, I want to hope everyone is they and their families are doing well, dealing with this pandemic and different things. Part of why this is important to me is not just because I'm a teacher, but because seeing specifically, the situation with Versus and Teddy and Babyface, I'm going to laugh and I'm going to get these jokes off too. But one thing it helped me realize, well, I won't say one thing, but one of the things that it helped me realize is that I don't think anyone in their right mind, and even people who are half crazy, know better than to think that Teddy Riley is not a dope producer. So that is not part of any of this conversation. Everybody knows Teddy's dope. But we also know that Teddy didn't sound good last night, or whatever night that was. And there's artists who will never have that level of talent, but if they learn things like this in order to send, it wasn't jam oh jam, it was like damn oh damn, but I hear you, Harp. But if they learn these kind of components and these things, the fact that they won't have the talent of other folks, but they will have a clear, strong, high standard, high quality audio signal, and then ideally a high quality video signal along with it, it allows them to compete in some shape, form, or fashion to gain, expand their listenership, their fan base, etc. So a lot of times you'll have great artists who don't, and Versus was a perfect example. Great artists don't sound good. People don't care how great the artist is. They don't want to hear things that don't sound good, no matter how great the artist is who's putting it out. They want things that sound good. People will listen to, I won't say substandard, but people will accept a lower skill set or a lower level of ability if the quality of the product is at a certain level. So if you understand how to work these different facets of the stream, you know, and myself included, may never have the talent of a Jazzy Jeff or DJ Craze or Kid Capri or Teddy Riley or insert whoever here. But I know that no matter when I go live, if I'm doing these things properly, I know my sound is always going to sound good. And I know that if I have a Zoom or an IG Live and someone joins me, that I'm going to sound good and they're going to sound good. So that's part of why doing this the right way was important. I tried to do this earlier. It didn't happen right. I was dealing with Wi-Fi issues that had everything all blurry, and I was so frustrated. But I had to take a step back and kind of collect myself and remember that I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this to help as many people as possible up the level of whatever creative process they're trying to share with the world. Because always, but now more than ever, you know, it's clear that artists, creatives are helping keeping, not even themselves, but keeping people sane and keeping people connected and doing things that we physically aren't able to do. So that's very important. The last thing is that as an artist, part of my art and part of my creative nature is therapy for me. So artists and creatives are going to be creative. We're going to figure out a way to do what we need to do for ourselves therapeutically and artistically, creatively. And inside of that, we generally speaking have the desire to help other people be better, feel better, etc. as well. And there's no better way to do that than have high quality audio when you're sharing something with an audio component. Or now some people may understand like, oh shit, I didn't know I could do all that. So now they're pushed into a new creative space or a space of being more creative or more daring or what have you, because they now know how to do something that they didn't know how to do before. So those are kind of the reasons why I had to kind of take a step back but still commit to getting this tutorial set up and knocked out. So once again, whether you're using hardware like this mixer here, whether you're using software or a combination therein of a hardware interface that is controlled by software. So, you know, there's a lot of different kind of things that you can throw into the mix when we talk about what your signal chain or path looks like. But in the end, all of this can come out of here, and it comes down to a couple of simple things. How do I get my source into that tip ring sleeve? Because that allows it to connect to my device, and from my device, the streaming platform is going to receive it. And then ideally, if I'm one way, I just have to be sure I'm sending good audio and good video. If it's two way, like a Zoom or IG Live where somebody's joining my live, I just have to be sure that A, I'm able to hear them on the back end, because it is a conversation. It's speaking, it's ears and mouth, hearing and speaking. And then once again, little things kind of come into play, specifically when we talk about Zoom. If you find yourself doing a Zoom and you're sending, let me see if I can get a refocus. Oh, there we go. If you're doing a Zoom, keep in mind that, and this is going to be hard to explain, but I'll try to do it quickly because we only have about 80 seconds remaining. If you're doing Zoom specifically, the way the platform and the software and the guts inside of Zoom, IG Live a bit too, there's compressors and limiters that work automatically to make sure that voices are amplified and heard so everyone can be part of the platform, part of the conversation. So think about it like a bridge, and a truck and a person are both approaching this bridge. Now, if the bridge is normal height, the bridge is not going to cut the top of the truck off. But if the bridge starts to come down, the truck is going to be affected before the person walking next to the truck is. That's kind of what happens when you have multiple people talking and music going on Zoom. That limiter starts to drop the ceiling, and the first thing and the most noticeable thing to be affected is music, because the music is that truck. It's a louder, fuller package. So if you're doing Zoom specifically, I got 10 seconds remaining. Hit me in the comments or directly if you have more questions. But if you're doing Zoom and you're playing music, mute everyone else. Tell everybody to shut up, because once they start talking, they're dropping the bridge, cutting it off. Peace.